The world had always been silent, or so humanity thought. The night sky, filled with countless stars, was a beautiful but empty canvas. For millennia, Earth had been alone in the vastness of space, but that was all about to change. It started quietly. Strange electromagnetic pulses were detected by a few observatories around the globe, barely noticeable at first. Just slight fluctuations in the radio frequencies. Scientists, at first, assumed it was a malfunction or some natural phenomenon. However, as more and more reports came in from different countries, it became clear that something unusual was happening. The pulses didn't follow any known pattern. They were far too structured, almost like a code, but there was no way to decode it. Elena Foster, a brilliant astrophysicist at the European Space Agency, was the first to connect the dots. She sat hunched over her desk, eyes glued to the screen as the data came in. It was the middle of the night, but the urgency in her chest kept her wide awake. She could feel it deep in her gut that this wasn't just some cosmic fluke. As the pulses grew stronger, something unexpected happened. The signals weren't just random bursts of energy. They seemed to be growing more specific, almost deliberate, as if someone, or something, was trying to communicate. It wasn't long before the small team at the agency, including Elena, started to realize the truth. They were receiving a message. But from whom? Elena's team was small but efficient. They had always been at the forefront of space exploration research, looking for signs of extraterrestrial life. But no one had ever really expected to find it. Not like this. As they worked late into the night, trying to piece together the strange signals, Elena felt an undeniable sense of dread in her heart. The signals weren't just a coincidence. They were a deliberate call, and it was coming from deep space. Could it be? Elena whispered to herself. Could this be the sign we've been waiting for? Her fingers moved quickly across her keyboard, trying to isolate the signal source. The data on her screen began to unfold, revealing a set of coordinates that didn't match any known object in the solar system. She felt her pulse quicken as she ran the calculations again. The source wasn't within Earth's range of exploration. The coordinates pointed to a spot far beyond their reach, located on the outer edge of the galaxy. Before she could digest the information fully, a voice broke her concentration. It was her colleague, Garcia, who had been monitoring the transmission from the other side of the room. "Elena, you need to see this," he said, his voice sharp with urgency. Elena rushed over to his station. The transmission had become clearer, and now a repeating pattern of pulses was visible on the screen. It was unmistakable. The signal had morphed into something more, something that no one had expected. It wasn't just noise anymore. It was a message encoded in a strange language, but one that wasn't entirely alien. There were hints of patterns that suggested a familiar structure. It was almost like the message was trying to mimic human language. "We need to decode this," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. She had no idea what they were dealing with, but her instincts told her they were on the brink of something monumental. Garcia nodded and began working with her to isolate the language. Time seemed to stretch on endlessly as they worked feverishly, their minds racing, their hands moving over their keyboards. As the minutes passed, the message began to form. At first it was just garbled strings of symbols, but slowly the patterns emerged into recognizable shapes, geometrical figures, precise mathematical sequences, and then words. The message wasn't long, but it was clear. "The stars are waiting. Humanity must answer." The room fell silent. Elena stared at the screen, her mind racing. For the first time in her life, she felt a sense of true awe. The message had been simple, yet it carried an undeniable weight. This was not some passing cosmic anomaly. This was a challenge, a call to action, and it was aimed at humanity. The silence in the room stretched as Elena and Garcia exchanged a look. They both understood what this meant. It wasn't just a communication from some distant alien civilization. It was an invitation, a demand even. The aliens weren't just watching Earth from afar. They were calling on humanity to step forward, to make a choice. But what kind of choice? And more importantly, what did it mean for humanity? Alina's thoughts raced. What if this was the first step in a long-awaited first contact? What if the signal was a test to see if Earth was ready to join the greater community of civilizations in the universe? Or perhaps it was a warning, a challenge to prove humanity's worth. As the message continued to pulse on the screen, Garcia's voice broke the tension in the room. What do we do now, Alina? Elena took a deep breath, her eyes still fixed on the screen. She had always dreamed of the day humanity would make contact with another species, but she never imagined it would come with such heavy consequences. They had no idea who was sending the message or why. They only knew that this was the beginning of something far bigger than any of them had imagined. We need to act, Elena said, her voice steady with resolve. We need to let the world know. They had no time to waste. Whatever this was, whatever it meant, they were no longer in control. The universe had spoken, and humanity's future was now intertwined with the unknown. The countdown had begun. The stars had indeed been waiting, and humanity was about to answer the call. Elena immediately contacted the International Space Federation, a collective of nations and organizations working together on space exploration. The message had to be shared with the world's leaders, military, and scientists. The truth had to be known. Earth had to prepare for what was to come. As the transmission was broadcasted to the highest levels of government and military, Elena could feel a shift in the atmosphere. A ripple of fear, curiosity, and excitement swept over the planet. People across the world were glued to their screens, watching as the message from the stars echoed in their minds. Governments scrambled to understand the meaning of the signal, and military leaders began planning for every possible scenario. And then, as if to confirm the message, the alien signal cut off abruptly. The sudden silence that followed was deafening. It was as if the universe had exhaled. The stars were once again silent, but now the world knew they were not alone. Elena sat back in her chair, staring at the now empty screen. She felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. This was just the beginning. The invitation from the stars wasn't just a message. It was a challenge. Humanity had to answer. The question was, what kind of answer would they give? And in that moment, Elena realized one thing. Everything humanity had known, everything they had believed about their place in the universe, was about to change forever. The silent stars were waiting, and soon the world would know what awaited them in the darkness. The world was not ready for what came next. The message from the stars had sent shockwaves through every corner of Earth, and now, as governments and scientists scrambled to make sense of it all, one question lingered in the air. What did humanity do next? In the days that followed, the globe united in ways it never had before. The International Space Federation had been established years ago as a way for countries to collaborate on space exploration, but this unprecedented moment required a level of cooperation no one had anticipated. The message was clear. Humanity needed to respond, but how? Elena Foster had become the face of the event. As the scientist who had deciphered the first part of the message, she was thrust into the spotlight. News outlets covered her every move, and the pressure of the world's expectations weighed heavily on her. She had spent years studying the stars, searching for signs of life, but now that she had found it, now that the universe had reached out to Earth, she was unsure of what came next. The next few weeks were a blur. Emergency meetings with world leaders, press conferences, unsettling conversations with military generals about the potential threat of this unknown alien civilization. But amid all the chaos, one thing was clear. Earth had no choice but to move forward. Elena stood in the briefing room with Garcia, who had been her right hand in decoding the alien signal. The weight of their discovery had only grown heavier as they uncovered more layers to the message. They had learned that the coordinates pointed to a distant star system, but beyond that, the signal had revealed something even more unsettling. The aliens had been watching Earth for centuries. They had observed humanity's progress and development, waiting for the right moment to make contact. The message wasn't a warning. It was an invitation. Or perhaps, as Alina feared, a test. As the room filled with officials from the International Space Federation, Alina took a deep breath. She had to be strong, composed. The entire future of humanity might depend on the decisions made in this room. She began to speak, her voice steady but tinged with the weight of the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, we've all seen the data. We've all heard the message, Alina began. What we know is that the aliens have been monitoring us, waiting for us to reach a certain point. Now, we're faced with a decision. Do we ignore their message, hoping that this is some kind of trick, or do we respond? A hushed silence filled the room. Garcia, standing by her side, spoke next, his voice carrying the gravity of the situation. We don't have the luxury of time. The message was clear. Humanity must answer. The longer we wait, the greater the risk. If they wanted to harm us, they could have done so already. But they didn't. The question now is whether we can prove we're worthy of joining whatever greater community of civilizations they represent. Alina nodded. Exactly. We're facing an opportunity to join the stars, but we don't know what that means. We don't know what awaits us in the depths of space. But we do know this. If we don't answer, if we don't take the risk, we may never know what could have been. A voice from the back of the room broke through the tension. It was General Marcus, the head of the Earth's military forces. His tone was stern, but his eyes showed the concern that mirrored everyone else's. Are we sure we want to take this chance? He asked. These aliens could be testing us for something we don't understand. If we go, what are we walking into? A welcoming party or a war? Alina met his gaze, unwavering. We don't know, General. But if we wait, we risk remaining alone. And that's something humanity cannot afford. We've been alone for far too long. The room fell silent once again. There was no easy answer. But there was something in Alina's words that resonated with everyone. They all knew the truth. They were at a crossroads, and the decisions made now would shape the future of their species. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the room's mood shifted. One by one, the members of the International Space Federation nodded in agreement. The choice was made. Earth would respond. But how? And who would go? Alina knew the answer. She had already been chosen. The mission to the distant star system would be humanity's first step into the unknown, and Alina Foster would lead it. In the days that followed, preparations for the mission moved at an unprecedented pace. Earth's first interstellar fleet was assembled, not just with military personnel, but with scientists, engineers, and diplomats. The mission would be a delicate balance, ready for anything the aliens might throw at them, but also diplomatic enough to prove humanity's worth in the eyes of the stars. Alina spent long hours in meetings, talking to engineers about the spacecraft's design, and with military officers about security protocols. There were hundreds of things to consider. How to handle first contact, how to ensure the safety of the crew, how to communicate with a species that may not even speak the same language. The pressure mounted with each passing day. But there was something else. Alina couldn't shake the feeling that the aliens weren't just watching. She wasn't sure how to explain it, but she felt a sense of familiarity in the signal, something that suggested they had been waiting for humanity to reach out for a long time. In the quiet moments of the day, Alina found herself standing by the observation deck, staring at the stars. She didn't feel small, though. She felt a part of something greater, something much larger than the confines of Earth. The universe, for the first time in her life, didn't feel so distant. The mission was set. The fleet would leave Earth's orbit in 3 days. As the final hours approached, Alina stood before the crew that would join her. Their faces were filled with a mix of excitement, fear, and uncertainty. They, too, knew they were embarking on something that could change the course of history. Everyone, Alina said, her voice steady, this is more than just a mission. This is humanity's future. What we do now will echo through the stars. We have a chance to prove ourselves, not through violence, but through the very things that make us human. Our curiosity, our willingness to learn, and our ability to reach beyond the stars." The crew nodded in agreement. Alina could see the determination in their eyes, the weight of the moment reflected in their expressions. They weren't just explorers. They were pioneers. The countdown had begun. The journey had begun. The interstellar ship, ascended horizon, sliced through the black void of space, leaving Earth behind. The crew, a mix of military personnel, scientists, engineers, and diplomats, had all come together for a single purpose: to answer the call of the stars. But no one knew what awaited them. Alina Foster stood at the front of the bridge, staring out at the vast emptiness beyond the ship's windows. The stars stretched out before her, but they no longer felt like distant pinpricks in the dark. They felt closer, as though the universe was watching them, waiting for humanity to prove itself worthy of joining it. She had spent countless hours preparing for this moment. She had reviewed the data on the alien signal until every pattern, every nuance, felt embedded in her mind. The message had been clear. The stars are waiting. Humanity must answer. But what did that really mean? Was it a challenge, a test, or something else entirely? "All systems are online, Captain." Garcia's voice pulled her from her thoughts. He was standing next to the console, his fingers dancing across the touchscreen, monitoring the ship's systems. "We're on course. Everything's functioning within normal parameters." Alina nodded, her mind still preoccupied with the message. Garcia was one of the few people she trusted, and she knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. The unknown awaited them, and they would have to face it together. But the silence in the room was heavy. The crew was still processing everything. They knew what was at stake. Alina could see it in their eyes. Fear, excitement, uncertainty, all swirling together. No one spoke much during the first few days. They were all trying to come to terms with what they had embarked on. The ship hummed softly as it traveled through space at faster-than-light speeds, its engines working overtime to cover the vast distance to the alien world. The trip was expected to take several months, but the ship's advanced propulsion technology could reduce that time drastically. Still, even with the latest technology, the isolation of space felt all-encompassing. At night, Alina found herself walking the corridors of the ship, her footsteps echoing in the emptiness. There were no stars visible from within the ship, only the cold metal walls and the soft whirring of the engines. It was easy to feel small in a place like this, to feel insignificant. But she couldn't let that feeling take root. She was leading this mission. She had to be strong, for herself and for the crew. One evening, as Alina walked past the observation deck, she stopped. The windows gave a panoramic view of the universe, stretching out infinitely. This was the moment she had longed for, the moment she had dreamed of as a child. But now, with the reality of it sinking in, she felt the weight of the responsibility. They were heading toward the unknown, toward a place where no human had ever set foot. A soft voice broke through the silence. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Alina turned to find Garcia standing next to her. His eyes were fixed on the stars, but there was a hint of worry in his expression. He was trying to mask it, but Alina could see it. "It is," Alina said quietly. "But it also feels overwhelming, like the universe is holding its breath." Garcia chuckled softly. "I think we're the ones holding our breath." Alina smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Maybe. I just hope we're ready." The two of them stood in silence for a few moments, the vastness of space surrounding them. Neither of them said anything more, but both knew the weight of the situation. They were in the middle of a historic mission, and neither of them had any idea what would happen once they arrived. As the days stretched into weeks, the journey began to feel endless. There were technical briefings, strategy meetings, and daily simulations of potential first contact scenarios. They had no idea what the aliens looked like or how they would communicate. All they had was the knowledge that the signal had been sent, and that it was a call to action. There were moments when Alina found herself questioning everything. What if the aliens were hostile? What if they didn't want to share their knowledge or technology with humanity? What if this was all just a trap? She couldn't let herself entertain those thoughts for long. There was no turning back now. They were already too far into the journey. One day, the crew was called to the observation deck for a briefing. Alina stood in front of a massive screen, the stars twinkling outside the ship's windows. She turned to address the crew, who had gathered in silence, awaiting her instructions. "We're entering a critical phase," Alina began, her voice strong despite the fear gnawing at her. "We're approaching the coordinates of the signal. We've been monitoring it continuously, and we're closing in on the source, but we still don't know what to expect. It could be a planet, a ship, or something else entirely." She paused, looking each crew member in the eye. "I need all of you to be prepared for anything. We're not just explorers now, we're representatives of humanity. What we do here will determine our future. We're stepping into the unknown, and I don't know what we'll find, but we're in this together." The room was silent for a moment as her words sank in. Then, one by one, the crew members nodded. They were ready. They had no choice but to be ready. Over the next few days, they passed through an area of space that felt different from anything they had encountered. The stars seemed darker, more distant, and the ship's systems began to pick up unusual readings. There was no sign of the alien world yet, but the sense of something waiting, something just out of reach, grew stronger. Alina couldn't help but feel a growing unease. Something was coming. And then, just as they were about to enter the final stretch of their journey, the ship's systems began to glitch. Alarms blared as the lights flickered. Alina rushed to the command center, her heart pounding in her chest. "What's happening?" she demanded. Garcia worked quickly at his console, his face tense. "We're being pulled off course. Something is interfering with the ship's systems. It's like a gravitational anomaly, but it's unlike anything we've ever seen." Alina's mind raced. Could this be the alien presence? Was it showing its power, warning them to stay away, or was it drawing them closer? She had no answers. The feeling of being watched, of being led into something beyond their comprehension, was growing stronger with each passing moment. "Prepare for possible impact," Alina ordered. "Everyone, brace yourselves." The ship began to shake as the strange force intensified. Alina gripped the edge of her console, trying to keep her balance. She didn't know what was happening, but one thing was clear: they were no longer in control. The stars that had once seemed so distant were now pulling them in, and they had no choice but to follow. As the ship lurched again, Alina's mind raced. She had hoped for some answers, some sign of what lay ahead. But now, all she could do was hope that humanity was ready for whatever came next. They were about to meet the unknown, and there was no turning back. The ship, Ascendant Horizon, was no longer gliding smoothly through the stars. It was being pulled, dragged through space by an unseen force. The crew scrambled to maintain control as the gravitational anomaly intensified. Systems flickered, alarms blared, and the hum of the ship's engines became a strained groan as though the vessel itself was being stretched to its limits. Alina stood at the command console, her mind racing. Garcia was furiously working at his station, trying to stabilize the ship, but the readings on his screen only grew more chaotic. "It's not just gravity," Garcia said, his voice tight. "There's something else at play here, a kind of energy field. It's unlike anything we've encountered." The ship groaned again, and the hull shuddered as if protesting against the invisible hand pulling them. Alina gripped the edge of the console, trying to keep herself steady. "Can we break free?" she asked, her voice strained. "I don't know," Garcia replied. "Whatever's out there, it's not natural. The anomaly is too strong." The stars outside the windows had changed. The familiar twinkle of distant stars was replaced by an eerie, cold glow, as though the universe itself was bending around them. Alina felt her stomach churn, not from the ship's turbulence, but from the sense of being trapped. They were no longer merely in space. They had crossed into something foreign, something otherworldly. "Captain," a voice called from behind her. It was one of the junior officers, a young woman named Alina. Her face was pale with fear. "We've got something on the scanners. It's huge, and it's coming straight for us." Alina spun around, trying to mask her own growing panic. She stepped over to Alina's station, her eyes scanning the monitor. At first, the readings were erratic, but then they cleared up. Her breath caught in her throat as she saw it. It wasn't a planet. It wasn't a ship. It was a structure. The massive object in front of them dwarfed the ascendant horizon. Its shape was hard to define, like an enormous web of metal and energy, pulsating with an unsettling rhythm. It was as if the structure was alive, shifting and breathing with an energy that radiated through the very fabric of space. "This can't be real," Garcia muttered from behind her. Elena felt the same disbelief. They had come expecting first contact with a distant species, but this was something else. They had crossed into a region of space that seemed to defy all understanding. The structure before them wasn't just a building or a ship. It was an anomaly, a thing that bent the laws of physics and nature. It was alive, or at least it seemed to be. "Is that?" Elena hesitated, unable to complete the thought. "An alien artifact," Garcia suggested, his voice barely above a whisper. "Or something more." Elena responded, her heart pounding. "We need to approach with caution. We can't predict its intentions." The ship shook violently again, and this time the control panels blared louder as the crew struggled to maintain control. The structure was now directly in their path, and no matter what they did, the ascendant horizon was being pulled closer. Whatever this object was, it seemed to be aware of them, drawing them in like a moth to a flame. "Get ready for anything," Elena ordered, her voice firm despite the fear rising in her chest. "Prepare for possible contact. We don't know what we're dealing with." Garcia nodded and quickly began making adjustments to the ship's systems. Elena turned to the rest of the crew, her gaze sweeping over their anxious faces. She could see it in their eyes. The same uncertainty, the same fear, the same desperate hope. They were all in this together. "Steady, everyone," she said, trying to rally them. "We've come this far. We'll get through this." The ship crept closer to the structure, and as they did, something shifted in the air. Elena felt a strange pressure against her chest, as if the atmosphere itself had changed. The sound of the ship's engines, the beeping of alarms, the chatter of crew members, all of it seemed to fade away. The hum of the structure outside began to fill the room, a low, vibrating sound that felt both ancient and alive. Then, without warning, the ship lurched forward. The walls of the command deck trembled, and a blinding light filled the windows. The entire ship shook with the force of it, and Elena felt her body pushed back against the console. For a moment, everything went white. When the light finally faded, the ascendant horizon was still intact. The shaking had stopped. But something had changed. The structure was gone. Where did it go? Garcia's voice was filled with disbelief as he frantically checked the readings. It's vanished, just like that. It's not on any of the scanners anymore." Elena stared out the window, her mind racing. The object, whatever it was, had vanished without a trace, but she felt a deep, undeniable sense of something unfinished. The ship was still being pulled toward the source. She could feel it in her bones. "Look!" someone shouted. At first, Elena didn't understand what they were pointing to. But then her eyes fixed on a small, distant shape on the edge of the star field. It was moving slowly, but unmistakably, and it was larger than anything they had ever seen. It was another structure, but this one wasn't an anomaly. It was a ship, or at least something that resembled one, and it was heading directly for them. The ascendant horizon was now caught in its gravitational pull, and there was no way to avoid it. The crew scrambled to prepare for whatever was coming, but Elena knew it was too late. The aliens, whoever they were, had already made their move. "We need to prepare for first contact," Elena said, her voice steady despite the growing tension. "Get the communication systems ready. Everyone, stay calm." Garcia looked up from his station, his face pale. "This is it, isn't it?" "This is it," Elena replied. The weight of the moment crashed down on her. Whatever happened next, it would change everything. The crew had done everything they could to prepare, but nothing could truly prepare them for the unknown. The ship began to tremble again, but this time, it wasn't from the anomaly. This time, it was the force of something else. A presence. The alien ship, the real one, was here. The communication systems began to hum to life, and the screens flickered as they tried to establish a connection. Then, a voice filled the room. It was low and guttural, but strangely soothing, like the hum of a distant machine. "Humanity, you have answered. Prepare to meet the first of your kind." Elena's heart raced as the words echoed in her mind. The message was clear, and yet it left more questions than answers. The aliens were ready, and humanity's journey into the stars had just begun. The voice that echoed through the ship's communication system seemed to vibrate in Elena's chest, a deep resonance that felt almost physical. "Humanity, you have answered. Prepare to meet the first of your kind." The words were simple, yet they held a weight beyond comprehension. For a moment, silence filled the bridge as the entire crew absorbed what had just been said. The alien ship was no longer a distant, unreachable object. It was here, and it was speaking to them. Elena steadied herself. This was the moment they had prepared for. First contact. Everything they had done, every decision they had made, had led to this point. But despite the preparations, there was a gnawing uncertainty. What did it mean to meet the first of your kind? Was this a greeting, a warning, or something else entirely? "Establish a link," Elena ordered, her voice cutting through the tension that had thickened in the air. "We need to communicate." Garcia's fingers flew over his console, his face a mixture of determination and fear. The communication systems hummed louder as he worked, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm trying, Captain. The signal, it's not like anything we've seen before. There's a pattern to it, but it's non-human. It's almost like it's speaking directly to our minds." Elena's heart raced. "What does that mean?" "It means," Garcia replied slowly, "that they might be able to communicate telepathically, or at least in a way we don't understand yet." The hum of the ship's systems filled the room, but underneath it, there was something else, a presence, almost like the feeling of being watched, of being observed by something far greater. Elena glanced at the crew. They were all still, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. Some looked to her for guidance, but all of them knew the same thing. They were on the verge of something monumental. "Captain," said Elena, her voice trembling. I think they're asking us to come closer. They're opening a path for us." Elena turned to the window. The alien ship, no, the structure, whatever it was shifting. Its massive, organic-like form pulsed with light, opening in places as though welcoming them. A part of the structure, a huge opening that could have been a bay or a docking port, appeared just ahead, and a gravitational pull that had once been so relentless now seemed to gently guide them toward it. The ship's autopilot systems had already begun to adjust to this new course, no longer fighting the force but sensing with it. The decision had been made for them. The ascendant horizon was being drawn into the alien ship, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. "Get ready," Elena commanded. "Everyone, brace for docking. We don't know what we're walking into, but we have to remain calm." The crew moved swiftly, each person settling into their stations, checking systems, and securing themselves. Elena herself remained at the command console, her hand steady, but her mind racing. This was it. First contact with an alien civilization. And yet, the only thing she could think about was the strange sense of foreboding that had settled deep within her chest. The bay grew larger in the view ahead. The enormous structure loomed, its edges smooth and alien in design, It seemed to be waiting for them, as though it had always been there, expecting them. No one spoke as the ship drew closer. The low hum of the alien vessel grew louder, as though it were alive, the rhythm pulsating in time with their own heartbeats. The ascendant horizon slid into the docking bay, its engines humming softly as the docking clamps locked into place. A soft thud vibrated through the ship as it connected. Alina's heart pounded in her chest. This was the moment. The first step into a new chapter of humanity's existence. Docking complete, Garcia confirmed, his voice steady but filled with awe. Alina's eyes remained locked on the screen. The docking bay was massive, much larger than any human spacecraft. The walls were smooth and metallic, yet shimmering with an otherworldly energy. Light seemed to pulse from the structure, casting strange shadows that danced across the surfaces. A silence fell over the crew as they awaited the next move. Alina took a deep breath, steeling herself. She knew what had to be done. "Prepare to exit the ship," Alina said, her voice firm. "We'll go in teams. Garcia, you're with me. Alina, stay here and monitor all systems. The rest of you, stay alert. We don't know what we're walking into." The crew nodded, some with eagerness, others with fear, but all with determination. They had come this far together, and they would face whatever lay ahead together. Alina's hand hovered over the hatch release, her pulse quickening. She looked around at the faces of the crew, seeing the same blend of excitement and fear reflected in their expressions. They were all standing on the threshold of something unimaginable, but they had no choice now but to step through. With a final deep breath, Alina pressed the button, and the hatch slowly opened. A rush of cold, alien air filled the cabin, the scent of something unfamiliar and yet oddly enticing, filling her lungs. It was not like the sterile, recycled air of the ship. It felt alive, different. The crew stepped out, one by one, into the alien docking bay. Alina led the way, her steps echoing in the silence. The surface beneath her boots was smooth, almost glass-like, and the walls seemed to shimmer with light, as if they were made of some kind of organic material that had been shaped by an intelligence beyond their understanding. As they walked deeper into the bay, Alina's mind raced. They were inside something not just alien in design, but alive in a way that no human ship could ever be. The technology, if it could even be called that, was organic, symbiotic, and entirely unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Then, ahead, they saw movement. A shape, tall and dark, slowly materialized from the shadows. The figure was humanoid in shape, but its skin was a deep, iridescent color that shifted with every step. Its eyes, if they could even be called eyes, glowed faintly, like distant stars. Alina's breath caught in her throat. It was nothing like she had imagined. The being was both terrifying and magnificent. Its presence filled the room, and though it did not speak, Alina could feel its intelligence, its awareness. Humanity, the voice boomed again, though this time it was not through the ship's communication system. It came from everywhere, from within their minds, from the air itself. "You have answered the call. Now, the journey begins." The words echoed, and Alina's mind raced. This was it, the moment humanity had been waiting for. But this was only the beginning. They had answered the call, but what did that truly mean? And what would they face next? Before she could speak, the alien figure stepped forward, its movements fluid, graceful. It extended a hand toward her, and she found herself instinctively reaching out to meet it. As their hands touched, a surge of energy coursed through her body, like a flood of knowledge rushing into her mind. Images flashed before her eyes, vast alien cities, ancient technologies, and glimpses of civilizations that spanned across galaxies. But there was something else, something darker, lurking just beyond the reach of her consciousness. Then, the images stopped, and a voice inside her head whispered, "Welcome to the stars. Welcome to the universe." Alina's heart pounded in her chest, the weight of what she had just experienced settling on her. Humanity had answered the call. And now, they were part of something far greater than anything they had ever imagined. But the path ahead was still shrouded in mystery. What was the price of joining the stars? And how would humanity shape its destiny in this vast, unknown universe? The journey had only just begun. The days after first contact with the alien race were filled with chaos and excitement. The crew of the Ascended Horizon had returned to the ship after their brief interaction with the alien being, their minds still reeling from the profound experience. Alina stood on the bridge, staring out into the endless expanse of space, unable to shake the feeling that humanity had just crossed into a new era. They had learned so little yet so much. The aliens had made it clear that they had been observing humanity for a long time, waiting for the right moment to make contact. The figure they had met was only the first of many that they would encounter. It was part of a larger, ancient civilization, one that spanned galaxies, existing for longer than humanity could possibly comprehend. But there were no answers to their most pressing questions. What did the aliens want? What role did humanity play in the larger picture? Why had they waited until now to reach out? And most importantly, what were the consequences of answering the call? Captain, Garcia's voice interrupted her thoughts, pulling her back to the present. He stepped into the bridge, looking as exhausted as everyone else. We've analyzed the data from the encounter. The energy readings are unlike anything we've seen before. Whatever that entity was, it wasn't just a representative. It was a conduit, channeling a vast network of knowledge. And it seems to be directing us. Alina turned to face him, her brow furrowing. Directing us to where? Garcia hesitated, his eyes flicking to the display screen in front of him. The ship's navigation system had been hijacked. They had entered a part of space that was completely uncharted, a place where no human ship had ever ventured, a place where even their instruments could hardly make sense of the readings. Wherever we're going, Garcia continued, it's not just a destination. It's an invitation. The aliens are guiding us there, but they aren't saying why, not directly. There's a presence, something ancient, and I think they want us to interact with it, explore it, understand it. Alina felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The ambiguity of it all unsettled her. She had hoped for clear answers, for a sense of direction after the encounter. But all they had were more questions. Are we ready for that? She asked, her voice tight with uncertainty. We have no idea what we're walking into. Garcia didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked down at the screen in front of him, the lines of data flashing faster than Alina could process. The presence, it's growing. It's closer now. And we need to make a choice. We can turn around, leave this place, and never know what was waiting for us. Or we can move forward. But if we do, we have no idea what we'll find. The room fell silent as Alina stared at him. The thought of turning back seemed impossible. The human race had never been on the cusp of something so monumental. How could they walk away from this opportunity? Yet the unknown loomed so large. What if they were making a mistake? What if moving forward meant the end of everything they knew? She turned back toward the window, her hands clasped behind her back. The stars stretched out before them, endless and cold, and the alien presence loomed somewhere out there, waiting. We go forward, Alina said at last, her voice unwavering despite the doubts that swirled in her mind. This is humanity's chance to take its place among the stars. We've come too far to turn back now. Garcia nodded, though his face showed his own reservations. I'll begin preparing the course, Captain. Alina turned away from the window. Keep me posted on any changes. We don't know what we're dealing with, but we need to be ready for anything. As Garcia left the bridge, Alina remained still, staring at the screen. The silence on the ship was suffocating, as though it were holding its breath, waiting for the next step. Alina, too, felt as though her entire existence was suspended between two worlds, the one she knew and the one humanity was about to enter. Captain, Alina's voice came through from her station. We're receiving a new transmission. It's different from the previous one. Alina's stomach tightened. Patch it through. The screen flickered, and this time, the image that appeared was not that of a being or a message. It was a symbol, glowing softly in front of them, shifting and morphing in ways that defied logic. It was beautiful and hypnotic, its colors swirling in a mesmerizing pattern. It seemed familiar, yet alien, like a code, one that was designed to convey something beyond words. The voice returned, but this time, it wasn't coming from a single direction. It was as though the voice was coming from everywhere, enveloping the crew in its resonance. Humanity. The choice is yours. You have reached the threshold. Now you will decide. Will you stay and become part of the collective, or will you venture forth alone, in isolation? The path before you will define your future. Alina's breath caught in her throat. The message was a riddle, and yet it felt like a challenge. It was an invitation to join something greater, something vast and ancient, but it came with a heavy price. The choice to stay or go, to join the stars or remain in the darkness of the unknown. The crew stared at the symbol, entranced by its beauty and its message. But Alina felt a deep unease growing within her. The decision that lay before them wasn't just about exploration or discovery. It was about the future of humanity, a choice between something greater than they had ever imagined and the risk of losing themselves in the process. "We're being offered something incredible," Alina murmured, almost to herself. "But at what cost? What does it mean to become part of the collective? What do they want from us?" "We don't know," Garcia said quietly, his voice coming from behind her. "But we can't back out now. If we leave, humanity will never know what was out there, what potential we had. But if we stay, what will we become?" The weight of the decision pressed down on Alina. She had never been one to shy away from difficult choices, but this was different. The future of her crew, of humanity itself, was on the line. She took a deep breath, looking at the symbol once more. Then, with resolve in her voice, she turned to her crew. "Prepare to engage," she said. "We're going forward, but we do it together. Whatever lies ahead, we face it as one." The crew nodded, the resolve in their eyes matching her own. They didn't know what awaited them, but there was no turning back now. The ascendant horizon would carry humanity forward, into the stars and beyond, where they would either find glory or face unimaginable consequences. As the ship's systems hummed to life, and the course was set, Alina looked out once more at the vast expanse of space. The stars, once distant and cold, now seemed closer than ever, and for the first time, humanity was ready to take its place among them, ready to step into the unknown. They had answered the call, and now the universe would never be the same again. The moment the ascendant horizon crossed into the heart of the unknown, something shifted within the crew. The initial excitement of exploring the depths of space had been replaced with a quiet, almost reverential tension. Every one of them knew they were on the edge of a discovery that could forever alter the course of human history, but none of them had any idea what lay ahead. For Alina, the weight of command had never felt more pressing. She paced the bridge, her mind racing with the possibilities of what the aliens wanted, or what their intentions might be. The alien transmission had left them with more questions than answers. Humanity's very future seemed to hang in the balance. "Captain," Garcia's voice broke through her thoughts, his voice steady but with an underlying tension. "The path we're on, it's not just an invitation. It's more like a test. The further we go, the more I'm detecting strange energy signatures, patterns we can't decipher. It's like the ship is guiding us into something, or something is pulling us." "How far are we from the destination?" Alina asked, gripping the edge of the console. Her gaze flickered between the map and the readings on the screen. "Not far. But the closer we get, the more intense the energy readings become. I've never seen anything like it. It's almost like the ship is reacting to us," Garcia explained. His eyes flickered nervously, "and the communications are becoming more frequent, more cryptic too. It's like they're trying to test our understanding, our ability to follow." Alina took a deep breath. "Test us?" How? Before Garcia could answer, the ship shuddered, a low hum filling the air, vibrating through every surface. It wasn't a violent tremor, but one that made the crew's stomachs tighten in anticipation. Elena instinctively reached for the control panel, her fingers brushing across the cold metal as the ship's systems stabilized. What was that? Elena asked from her station, her voice trembling. We're entering something, Garcia muttered, his gaze glued to the console. Something. Ancient. The energy signatures are converging. The ship began to slow, its movement almost as if it were in tune with the vast and mysterious force that surrounded them. On the view screen, the stars outside shifted, changing in hue and shape. No longer were they simply dots of light in a dark void, but vibrant and swirling patterns, glowing with a strange luminescence. The ship was no longer moving through normal space. This was something else entirely. And then, without warning, the ship's communication system activated. The voice of the alien presence came through again, stronger now, as if the very fabric of the universe itself was speaking through it. Humanity. The voice resonated not just through the speakers, but inside their minds, wrapping around them like a force that transcended spoken language. You have reached the threshold. You now stand before the endless archive. The knowledge of the universe is laid before you, a gift and a burden. You will decide whether you will take it and rise to the stars, or reject it and return to the solitude of your kind. Elena's breath hitched. The endless archive. The words echoed in her mind, deepening the sense of gravity that hung over her. The crew turned to her, their eyes filled with questions, fear, and awe. This was no longer just an encounter with an alien species. It was an invitation to something far grander, something that could reshape everything they knew. Captain, Garcia said, his voice low but urgent. The data is showing a massive structure ahead. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. A vast, interconnected web of something. It's like a living database, like the ship is alive, and the knowledge flows through it. Elena looked out of the bridge windows. Far ahead, through the shimmering atmosphere, an enormous shape began to materialize. It wasn't a ship in the traditional sense. It was a colossal structure, an intricate and incomprehensible latticework of glowing tendrils and swirling energy. It defied all human understanding of architecture, shifting constantly as if it were alive, growing, and pulsing with purpose. Are we supposed to land on that thing? Elena whispered, her voice full of disbelief. We don't have a choice, Elena said quietly. She turned toward her crew, her resolve hardening. Prepare for docking. Whatever this is, we are stepping into it. Stay sharp. We don't know what we're dealing with, but this is the opportunity of a lifetime. We'll face it together, no matter what comes. The ascendant horizon edged closer to the structure, its docking systems activating automatically, responding to an unseen signal from the alien web. Elena felt the strange hum of the ship resonate through her body as they approached. It was as if the ship itself was being drawn into the structure, not by force, but by some kind of magnetic, irresistible pull. The ship docked smoothly, and Elena, accompanied by Garcia, Elena, and the rest of the crew, prepared to exit the ship once more. The airlock doors hissed open, revealing the vast chamber beyond. The moment they stepped into the alien structure, the air felt thick and charged with energy. It was unlike anything they had ever experienced. The walls of the chamber were composed of a material that seemed to breathe, shifting and pulsating in rhythm with the energy that filled the space. The very air seemed to hum with knowledge, with information. The space was enormous, far beyond the size of their own ship. It felt like they were standing in the heart of something vast, something that spanned not just space, but time itself. In the center of the room stood a figure. It was humanoid, but its form was distorted, as if it was made from the very energy that surrounded them. It was a being made of pure, radiant light, its outline shifting and flickering, as though it existed on the edge of perception. The crew stood still, awestruck. Elena took a step forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no idea what they had just walked into, but it was clear. Humanity was standing at the threshold of a new reality. The being spoke, its voice echoing not through the air, but directly into their minds, its words full of infinite depth. Welcome, humanity. You have come far. And now, you must choose. The knowledge of the universe is before you. Will you rise, or will you fall? Alina's thoughts raced. This was it, the ultimate test. They had reached the point of no return. The endless archive was before them, and with it, the power to change everything. But at what cost? Could humanity truly handle such knowledge, such power? She glanced back at her crew, seeing the same mix of awe and fear in their eyes. They had come this far together, and they would face whatever lay ahead together as well. Alina swallowed hard and took a step toward the being, feeling the weight of the choice pressing down on her shoulders. "We rise," she said, her voice firm and resolute. Together. The beam before them seemed to flicker with recognition, its glowing form brightening in response. Then let the journey begin. As the words echoed through their minds, the walls of the chamber seemed to dissolve, revealing a vast, endless expanse of stars, planets, and galaxies. The path before them was now clear. The journey had truly begun. And as Alina and her crew looked into the boundless reaches of space, they knew one thing for certain. The stars would never be the same again. Humanity had answered the call, and the universe would remember.